Hello, everybody, and we're back for another episode of Podpit. And I'm super excited about this one because I'm talking today to a gentleman called Tony Walmsley, who I don't think we've actually ever met, have we?
No, we haven't.
We haven't, which is really bizarre, actually, because I do think we share quite a lot of mutual friends. I think there's quite a few, I think.
Yeah, well, obviously I heard you on a podcast and then started following you, and yeah, I can see we've got mutual friends. So yeah.
Yeah, so it's quite interesting that I grew up in a little place called Lichfield, and I think your business is based there. And Lichfield is like the centre of the universe, but everyone seems to know everyone. So it's amazing that our paths haven't crossed until now. But it's great to have you on. Tony Tony and I met through this mutual friend who interviewed us both for his podcast in separate episodes. And I really enjoyed listening to Tony's episode. I thought it was really insightful. Tony thought the same about mine, and we connected on Facebook, and we've been following each other's journeys sort of ever since, really. And since we connected, it's been basically the duration of the COVID period, really. And it's probably fair to say that our journey in and out and back into lockdown during the pandemic, our journeys have been quite different, but we both share some very strong values and methods and outlook out for our businesses. And for that reason, we decided to do the interview today, discuss some of the values, and one particular value. I don't know if it is a value, but one particular area that we both had to demonstrate a lot of in recent times, and that is resilience. So Tony is going through a period right now with his business, which we'll discuss in a bit more detail later. And I've had some tough times in recent years where my resilience was stretched to near breaking point. Where we are globally right now with COVID, what better time to dig deep on resilience than right now? So that's where this is all coming from. I'm going to shut up now, let Tony have a chat about his business and what he's doing in his professional life right now. And then we'll get stuck into the nitty gritty. So off you go, mate.
Thanks, Gareth, and thanks for the invite to chat with you today. I suppose by trade, I'm a hairdresser, and I've been doing it now for near on 20 years. But started my business 10 years ago, next week after. Wow. So, coming up 10 years now. So started it off, as you said, we're in Lichfield, and it's a barn conversion, so quite different to other salons. Started off in a unit that was just under 1,000 square feet, and sort of 5 years into that journey, knocked into the unit next door, so over doubling the space. And with that, of course, had to gradually double the size of the team and everything else that goes with that as well. So quite a journey, really. Decided to do that rather than open a second salon. Mm-hmm. And we're at the stage now. We've got a team of 23 now.
Wow.
So my job has obviously changed dramatically. My job is more or less leadership now. Still do quite a few clients, but really day to day is leading the team.
Yeah.
And obviously business. So all going well. I suppose this last 12 months was the 12 months where it was all meant to make sense, and then COVID happened. So we'd sort of done the curve of the J and gone through the painful growing pains, and and this year it was all going to make sense, and then COVID happens. But I've got to be honest, COVID, although I'm sure we'll go into this, personally lots has happened, but actually it's been, in terms of my personal career, I think one of the best 12 months I've had, although there's been lots of course, rubbish and worry and everything else and anxiety that goes with it. But I feel I've grown more than I've grown in quite a long time.
Yeah.
And with that, I think the business will, and I can see the team already have as well. So that takes us up to today. I've started doing a bit of business coaching and leadership coaching and that sort of stuff, purely because people started asking me to.
Oh, so you've been delivering some coaching, like
Yeah, I've been doing bits.
wow,
Yeah,
wow,
and that's the side that I really want to grow as well.
yeah,
And I suppose start looking at franchise models and that kind of thing. But again, I suppose my approach to that will be coaching my team through having a franchise. So for me, it's all about learning.
yeah. So I suppose you've used this period of where you've had a bit more time on your hands than you were expecting to. There's a lot of self-reflection, a lot of taking a helicopter view of your business and looking at where there may be gaps, where you can plug them, what you can do to react to make yourself sort of exit lockdown and the pandemic in a stronger position than when you went in.
Yeah, like I say, it's pure reflection. For the first time in 10 years, I slowed down. And in my industry is all about pace, I suppose, and especially when you're working on clients, you're watching the clock all the time. Every half an hour, every hour, you're with someone new,
Mm-hmm.
And the more clients you see, the more turnover you get, and so on and so on. And actually, just taking a step back and thinking, actually, do I need to be doing that, and does my team need to be working at the pace they are?
Mm-hmm.
So some of the restrictions with COVID when we were allowed to reopen made us slow down. So we had to have bookouts for cleaning in between clients, and we had to have extra time for certain services because they wouldn't have had those services done for quite a while.
Mm-hmm.
And actually, I suppose business-wise, you see what's coming through in turnover, and you're doing it at a much slower pace, but yet you're bringing more turnover in. So just really, really analysing it, but deeper than you have before, rather than just thinking, well, this is how things are and it works, so we're going to keep working with it. Actually, there is different ways to do things, and in some ways, better ways to do things as well.
Yeah. It sounds like you've taken a lot of learning from this, and I know learning is something that you're quite hot on. Like generally, self-development is a big thing for you, as it should be with everyone, really. But you place a lot of emphasis on that. Is that, like, with the business coaching, something that you've started to do this year? I suppose I know that you put a lot of emphasis on your team and your team being put into a place and a position and a workspace where they can flourish and where their skills and abilities can come to the fore. So I suppose the natural sort of step for you would be to take that sort of like coaching, mentoring sort of approach with your team, to take that to other people's businesses and help them do similar things.
Yeah, totally. I think so many people, you come into a certain level of business, and I know we were speaking before about networking and things like that. And I suppose I used to downplay what I did quite often. And I always think other people's businesses are bigger than mine, and other people's businesses are better than mine, and all the rest of it. When you actually get speaking to people, there's everyone has the same worries, and the same concerns, and the same things that keeps them up at night, and all those kind of things. What I've actually found for me is the worries they have aren't the same worries that I have, and actually, so I've got value to add to them. Mm-hmm. And I just think if you take it's the whole fault versus responsibility type thing, isn't it? And I think if you take full responsibility of the things that you can control, and if you feel you haven't got the skill sets, go about learning how to get that skill, you can't go far wrong. And if someone can help you along on that journey, then brilliant. And often it is just hearing. This is why podcasts are so good, and why they've become so popular, because it's people basically telling their story. And if you're open to learning from that story, no matter who they are, it can only, even if it's just a little nugget you get that helps you in some way, it can only be a good thing.
Definitely.
I've always had a business coach. I'm lucky it's my father-in-law, but the amount of things that you take from here, as long as you're open to those types of sometimes difficult conversations, the things you can take from it is brilliant.
Yeah, I think you've hit the nail on the head there. Like podcasts are all about people telling stories, and that is what Podpit's all about. It's real people telling real stories about their real businesses. So, you can listen to, is it the Joe Rogan podcast? You can listen to James Haskell do his podcast. You can listen to all of these famous people doing their podcasts, and it's great and it's inspirational. But I do think that they're out there. They're regular people like you and I, working hard at the top of their game, and we've all got amazing stories, and they're the ones that are much more relatable, I think, and that's why I hope that there'll be a lot of takeaways from today's chat. So you've obviously got the business, it's going great guns, and then, as you alluded to just now, year 10, decade in the sun. This is the year it all starts to make sense. Big plans ahead, bish, bash, bosh. Boom, kick in the bollocks, COVID hits, everything shuts. What happens in the Walmsley household?
Oh, shit, first of all. But yeah, I can remember, as I mentioned, my father-in-law is a business coach, not just my business coach. And so this word COVID started coming around, and so it's probably just over a year ago now. So it's probably 3 weeks before we actually had to close. I can remember sitting with him in a cafe, and you could see elsewhere in the world, places were starting to just close down and all the rest of it, and just saying, like, what the hell do I do here? And furlough wasn't even a word. So strategically you sit there, and again, I suppose, external and internal power, what are you going to do? So the only thing that is in my power is what's happening right now, and that was to make a list of all the outgoings. If we were to close tomorrow, how long can we last if these outgoings are still going out? Obviously, you don't know, how landlords will be with you, and we spend tens and tens and tens of thousands with our suppliers. You don't know if they're going to just ask for their money. It was just the unknown. But again, through that process, you then, I suppose you get an element of control, and that's what it's all about, isn't it? Mm-hmm. Then we did have lockdown. My wife had just started her own business as well. So she'd gone from earning a great salary as a vice principal in a secondary school to just starting her own business. So there was that. Yeah. But again, she shares the same outlook as me, and it's like, right, what can we do? So the first thing she does is, put her foot down on the accelerator, and suddenly got loads of clients in. Mm-hmm. Which took the pressure off, I suppose, financially on the salon. And then it's just, right, each week you learn a little bit more, and sort of knowing a little bit more what it's going to look like out the other end, PPE, all that sort of stuff. Mm. So essentially in that first lockdown, I had to sort of plan a whole new business. But what came from that is what we were saying previously, where you learn so much about the business you've got whilst you're having to plan this new business, and actually what does work. And actually when you sat down and really went through things, there's some things we were doing that I probably hadn't had a chance to properly analyse that just weren't working, whether that was financially it wasn't viable, whether that was as a client, that part of the journey wasn't quite as good as it could have been. Mm-hmm. But it's just how we were doing it. And gave us a chance to plan something new. Mm-hmm. And then I suppose from there, it's just been so stop-start. I think that's been the hardest thing is you feel like my type of business, we knew we were going to be busy when we were open. Yeah. Particularly straight after lockdown, you had 6 weeks that were just hectic. Mm-hmm. But you never quite knew when the next one was coming. And again, you just got to try and get that to the back of your mind, because you have absolutely no control of it. All you can do is make sure the people who are you're responsible for, and for me that's my team and the clients that are in our building, that whilst they're with us, they're as safe as possible, and that's all we could focus on, really.
It's all you can control, which is going back to what you said just now. It's internal and external control, what you can influence, what you can affect, and that is it, isn't it? It's as soon as people set foot over the threshold of your building, if they're as safe as they can possibly be, then you've done your job in that respect. So the 3-week lockdown that kicked in on the 23rd of March 2020, we're now on the 25th of March 2021, and we're still still in it really. So that initial lockdown, I think it was supposed to be 3 weeks, turned into 3 months. I think, was it 3 months? I think it was. Then we had a couple of months unlocked, not grounded anymore. Then we had the tier system. Then we had, I think they called it a fire break or something like that, which was a 2-week lockdown, and back into the tier system. And then just after New Year, we had another lockdown. So it's been a really stop-start year for you. I want to get into the sort of nitty-gritty of this chat today and talk about the resilience that you've had to show during this period. So what does resilience mean to you?
It's a tough question, really, and I suppose everyone would have a slightly different answer to it. But for me, it's sort of a set of skills that you gain through going through rubbish, through going through crap, going through anything, and I suppose then it's how your approach to situations. So if you can approach a situation as learning, then you can always come out of anything the other side with a different skill set, or having learned something that's going to help you when something like that comes around again. Mm-hmm. And I think any learning, sometimes it's something you read, sometimes it's something that someone said to you, and sometimes it's you've observed your parents going through something similar, whatever it is. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I think for me, I see my sort of resilience as my superpower. Everyone says everyone's got a superpower, and for me, I do think there's people out there better than me at cutting hair. There's people better than me at most things, but I haven't met anyone yet that I feel is as resilient as me. Mm-hmm. And it's something I still think I can get more resilient. Don't get me wrong, but so I suppose I add emphasis onto that when I'm approaching anything. So if anyone, if for instance with lockdown, you heard of stories of other businesses where it just sounded like an absolute nightmare for the whole team that run up to being locked down. And don't get me wrong, it's an emotional time as a business owner. Mm. But if you're acting on that emotion, and what are you going to gain from it? Mm. So we made sure that our last 2 weeks of work was as successful as possible in every single way. Mm-hmm. We could plan. So I suppose like removing the emotion and thinking, right, there's always something you can learn. There's always something you can do to make the situation better. Mm-hmm. Even if it's a drop in the ocean, you never know what that might lead on to.
Yeah.
And I did, there were a few people that I could see and that I spoke to through it who almost just gave up very quickly, just it's so out of their control, and perhaps had that control freak nature about them. All of a sudden, that it was so out of their control, it's like, well, I might as well do nothing. Where actually, whether it's spending 6 hours on hold to the bank, which I'm sure we all did, if not days, whether it's say planning for what it's going to be like when we get back, whether it's keeping in contact with your clients, keeping in contact with your team, just do it, just all these little things, which, don't get me wrong, if you can see that your slush fund in the business is going down daily, it might feel like a drop in the ocean, but it's still something that's in your control that you're doing to help yourself. Even if it's to helping yourself out the other end, you're still doing something.
Yeah, there's a lot I picked up on in that bit of discussion there, so remaining calm under pressure, taking the emotion out of it, looking for ways to learn from the situation you're in, and applying those learnings like almost instantly. There's something we chatted about just before we hit record today, which was if you don't do these things, you run the risk of falling into this sort of like victim mentality, where you then begin this sort of downward spiral of negativity as well. So is that something that you try to, that anti-negative, that positive sort of vibe, is that something you look to try and push in and build up in your team members?
Yeah, yeah. And it's something that I look for in someone when I'm interviewing them. I try and the questions I'd ask is to try and get into sort of their core a little bit rather than just their skill set. And I suppose as a person, I struggle being around negative people. I struggle to get it sometimes and that's not something I like about myself. To be honest, I feel like I need to get better at being more better at tolerating that kind of attitude.
But that's a brilliant positive reaction to what you recognise as a negative trait. So then, do you see where I'm coming from?
Learning. Yes, I'm learning.
Yeah.
But so no, I just don't see the point. I suppose, again, like I said, that when you're learning these things, a lot of these things do come from childhood and whatever, don't they? And I suppose what I'd say about my parents is when almost like the worst case things happen, and then when I was younger, I suppose there was some of those things that were happening in their lives and therefore my life. What I saw with them is that's almost like when they're at their absolute best is when other people would give up and just look up to the sky and like, what's going on here? That's when they're the calmest kind of thing, and you're thinking that I touched on it before we came on, but my dad's in hospital at the moment with COVID and has been really, really ill. It's still in intensive care, getting better, thankfully. But I never saw my mum cry through any of the really, really bad bits where we thought we were losing him. The day she got the call to say, he's actually sitting up if you want to FaceTime him, that's when she showed the emotion.
The emotion.
Yeah. So it's almost like when it's at its worst, actually do the things you can to make it better. That's not the time to give up. And once you start sort of coming back out of it, maybe then let that emotion come out a little bit. But again, I'd normally take a couple of days off to do that and just make sure that the team stay level kind of thing,
Yeah. So what you're saying there is the old adage of tough times don't last, but tough people do. So when the going gets tough, dig your feet in, roll up your sleeves, grit your teeth, all of that, get stuck in, get through it. And when you come out the other side, you'll be stronger for it. And that's when you can relax a bit more and you'll feel better for it.
Yeah, and when you look at other generations, though, this is the first time that people our kind of age and younger have gone through our like this. And generations before us they don't have sort of pandemics like this. But when you look at our grandparents' generations who went through the war and things, and then we're saying all the time through this whole the older generation not wearing the masks and all that sort of stuff. The resilience that they've built up through going through all those things, you can't even imagine how strong they are of mind, having gone through the things that they've gone through and seen the things that they've gone through. And okay, we hear stories and whatever of that, but having lived through it, they must be so strong. So the positive of all this rubbish we've had for 12 months is, as long as we're open to learning from it in every way, but learning as people and how we can improve, just imagine what the future could be for you, kind of thing.
Yeah. I can't remember who I was talking to. Excuse me, but I was talking to somebody the other day, and I was saying, if we don't learn from COVID, if we don't take something positive from COVID and change normality for the better when we get out of this, then we have missed the trick here. It's so important that we, like some of the things that have come from COVID, geography is no boundary. We're sat here chatting today in real time, 160 miles apart. The way people have rallied round and been there for others through a screen. Mental health has been top of the agenda for a lot of people and a lot of media outlets for a couple of years now. But I think people are much more at ease talking about that because of COVID, because we all recognise our mental health. No matter how positive you are, our mental health has not been as it's more fragile now than it probably ever has been for everybody. But all of these things, we need to take them forward and carry on, being open about mental health, being there for people, not ignoring the connectivity we've got with Zoom. Obviously face to face is better. I can't wait to hug my mum and dad, but we must learn from this period of time, mustn't we?
Yeah, there's so much to learn on loads of different levels, and again, I suppose I love people, and I love working with people and seeing people grow, and again, in every way, in every part of their life. And I think it has, again, as long as you're open to it, it has given you time to think about those things, and especially mental health. It's I suppose more people can relate to mental health because maybe for the first time ever they've gone through it themselves with everything that's been going on.
Yeah.
And understood their triggers a bit better, and people just spent more time on their own, I suppose. And I know a lot of people, their sort of coping mechanisms, so I suppose that their plasters, if you like, revolve around the energy they get from other people rather than from inside themselves. And so again, I think that those growing pains, so people will feel like they've had a really terrible 12 months, but actually the time they've spent sort of, I suppose, analysing that and working through it, hopefully they've gained skills that coming out the other end, they can help themselves sort of cope with those types of things better and live with those types of things better.
Yeah.
And understand, it's almost like everyone's just had everything stripped away, haven't they? Just everything stripped right back, and what are you left with? And some people have been really happy with what they're left with, and other people haven't. And again, it's up to you to make a change then, isn't it? It's up to you to think, right, but going forward, how do I want my life in whatever way to be different and to be better, and for me to feel more fulfilled?
Yeah, I think the materialistic things that we used to cherish maybe seem a little less important now. Like the whole process for me has been like different to you. It's not been a great year for me, but it's not been anywhere near as challenging as yours. But the first thing I did was just cut out so many things out of my business. Then I looked at it and went, do you know what? I need to think sensibly here. I'm going to get rid of some of the overhead that I've been carrying for too long. And I cut back my business overhead like ridiculous levels. And all of a sudden, the whole business felt a lot lighter, which made me feel a lot lighter. And I looked at it and I thought, why was I doing that? Why was I doing? I didn't need these things that I thought made my professional life better. But actually, they were just a cost that I didn't need to spend every month. And there's things like that I think a lot of business owners will have done with their business. If they haven't, then they obviously didn't need to do that. So they've obviously flourished through lockdown. Some people have. But I think like anyone who has done well through lockdown shouldn't be afraid to celebrate that fact. But a lot of people, like yourself, would probably have looked at it from a helicopter view and gone, right, how long can we last? What do we need? What can we get rid of? Let's lighten the load a bit and let's work to that reopening date. So what does the future for Anthony John salons look like when we get reopened? 12th of April, is it?
Yeah, we're waiting on that confirmation. Clients are clinging on to the 12th of April. I get a lot of emails daily. So we're just waiting on that confirmation. But there's a lot of things that we've done for this last 12 months that we will keep. So, as an example, we used to work a certain shift pattern. And we've been looking at sort of changing that shift pattern for a little while. When you look at the markets in Asia and a lot of major European cities in our sector, places are open till 10 o'clock at night every single night.
Yeah.
And there's a reason obviously for that. And we used to do 2 late nights a week and open Saturday, Sunday, where firstly it was for social distancing measures, but we sort of extended our opening hours. I've got less of the team in whilst open, and so we had to split the team in 2. but having those extra options for clients to come in, open late every single night, including Saturday, open later, all of a sudden we could see actually more people, even though we had half the team in. And actually what that does as well in turn is mean that we were almost at our max capacity with the amount of team we had, because now it's been split in half. All of a sudden I can actually double the capacity.
Right.
So it might not stay exactly as it is, but there's elements of it we will definitely be keeping.
Did you know that was the case before COVID? Did you understand that you could have done that, or was that like a revelation that you kind of looked at and went, "Shit, we could do this"?
It was in the background, but so there's two worries with it. First of all, you've got the worry of the team. So all of a sudden you're saying, all of a sudden you're saying to everyone, right, you've got to do an extra, even if it's just one more late night. Yeah. Then you will get a bit of not great feedback from that. And then also the clients, like, is the need there? And if you all of a sudden implement these changes and then the need's not there, then you're in trouble that way as well. So it sort of like forced your hands, but then when you sat down doing the figures, and so we for us it was right, if they reduce us by 10% capacity, can we still go? If it's 20% capacity, can we still do it? And actually we got right down to quite a low capacity where we'd still be sort of paying the bills basically.
Yeah.
And I suppose what your back's against the wall, isn't it? So obviously communicating it to the team, but what's happened for the team is the full-timers all of a sudden in a 2-week shift pattern, they get half of that time off. So they basically in a 2-week period get a week off.
Right.
They're working longer days when they're in, but then they get much more days off. And with a younger team, if they're in 9 till 5, they're not going to do anything before and after it anyway. So they might as well come in, whatever it would be, 9 till 8.
Yeah.
And it's a day in work. They're saving on fuel and all the rest of it. And then the other thing it's done is for our part-timers, we've been able to bring in a flexi working type pattern where we've sort of got a coded system for different hours at different points, and they can choose, as long as their points are at a certain level, they can choose whatever hours they want.
Right.
And because we're open more hours, it's opened up that opportunity as well.
So it's a flexi working sort of arrangement there, isn't it? That and I mean, imagine in your game where you've probably got those part-timers are potentially maybe slightly younger than your full-timers?
No, opposite, to be honest. So the part-timers tend to be people who have had children and come back.
Right.
So again, if you imagine, so where before, I don't know, so one of the girls, for instance, she used to do 3 days a week. Obviously had to pay for childcare during those days and all the rest of it. All of a sudden, because we're open more hours, she just does all of those hours in 2 days, saves on 1 day childcare, and saves on fuel because she's only driving to work once, and she can make sure that those hours are key hours.
Yeah.
So because in our line of work it's mostly commission based, she might as well be in on the busiest hours because per hour she's going to earn herself a hell of a lot more. So again, it's definitely a learning from it. And maybe I knew it would be good, but maybe not as good as how it turned out.
Yeah.
And then just the pace of it, as we were saying earlier, just we used to work 45-minute appointment, and then it was at times the client would never feel it, but as a member of the team, there was times where you would feel quite rushed, I suppose. And actually, you don't need to do that. You really don't need to. You can slow it down. And if you're working at 70% occupancy, which the average in our industry is 60% occupancy, which doesn't sound great, I know. But if you're working at 70% occupancy, why don't you just stretch the appointments out and make it 80% or 85%? You just don't need to do it.
Yeah, it's a pace of life. It sounds like this is like a really innovative solution to a horrendous problem, really. So you've managed to make your part-timers' hours much more flexible. You've managed to save your full-timers money on fuel and give them more time off in a 2-week period. You've managed to lower the pace of work life. You've managed to expand capacity. It sounds pretty positive, this does. I'm trying to sort of find somewhere where it's like, oh, fucking hell, there's like a big hole in it here. But that sounds pretty good, really.
Again, you just got to look at it. And so, like I say, you sit there and you think, right, this is what's happening. It's not my fault it's happening, but it's my responsibility to come out of this as good as we possibly can do, both for me, my family, the team. My big thing was I really wanted to try and make sure that no one was made redundant and all that sort of stuff. We had such a good team, and we've managed to get through it all together. In fact, we've employed 4 new people during the last 12 months.
Wow.
So so it goes back to what we were saying. I suppose it's just that sitting there thinking, right, what can I do? And actually, some of these decisions at the time felt so small, a drop in the ocean, like we were saying earlier. But what can come from them is all of a sudden it just grows and grows and grows and grows, and all of a sudden you've got a different business and a more successful business for it.
Was there an element of, it's year 10, this is a kick in the balls, but we've come too far, we've built it to such a point that we can't let it slip now? And that's the sort of mindset you've applied to this, and you've just innovated to keep it going and improved, which is amazing.
Yeah, like I say, too much has happened in 10 years for you to just let it go. And I try not to attach too much emotion to the business, and they always say to detach yourself emotionally from it, don't they? And that can be so hard when you're in the middle of it because of relationships normally.
Yeah.
Relationships from a team, some of which I've employed for 10 years now. They've been there from the start. Relationships with the clients, all the blood, sweat, and tears that goes into it.
It's hard to not be emotional about that.
It is. And I think when lockdown first happened, you sit there and the first thing you do is feel emotional. But what I always do with anything like that is with a pen and paper, I think it's almost like more organic. It feels like it's actually coming from your insides when you do it on a pen and paper rather than a computer. Plus, I sometimes struggle to even turn a computer on, never mind.
You're dangerous with some scissors, but like terrible with a HP or a Dell.
So here's a problem. Write down the problem, and then have one side of it. So write down all the things that sort of are getting to you about that problem, and then go through with a highlighter and just highlight the things that are actually in your control about that problem. And normally what you find is so much of the things that you're so emotionally invested in, you can't do anything about. Whether that's other people's emotions, as long as you've treated them right, that's all you can do. Whether that's you've been told you're not allowed to open because of COVID, whether it's another salon opening just around the corner, whatever it is, there's so many things you can't do anything about. So highlight them, turn the page, write down just those highlights, and then just really focus and work your backside off on those things that you can do something about.
There's something really powerful about what you just said there, writing things down in there. It's like, there was somebody who said to me ages ago, and I can't remember who it was. It may have even been a quote, but it stuck with me. It's an idea when it's in your head, and it's a plan when you write it down. And it could be written on the back of a fag packet, let's be honest. As long as you get it out of your head, and written down somewhere, you can start to move forward with things there.
And it makes you instantly take ownership of it, doesn't it? I think. So it's almost like it's the same as saying it out loud. It maybe even more powerful than saying it out loud to people. It's just your little secret that you've written down and that you're going to work towards.
Yeah.
And then obviously you can break those things down and into different subcategories and all the rest of it. But if you just write down the things that are really getting to you, and almost leave it for half an hour, come back to it with a bit of more of a clear head, and just go through, right, I can't do anything about this, and this, but I can do something about these 2 things. Then just focus on those 2 things. You're spending too much energy worrying about things that you can't do anything about.
Yeah. Do you have you ever read the book Zero Negativity by Ant Middleton?
No, I've listened to a few podcasts with him on it.
I've just read that book and it's brilliant. And talking to you today, you'd absolutely love it. You would be all over it like a tramp on chips, mate. You'd love it. Everything you've said today is, you could have literally plucked it from that book. It would be well worth it, actually. My mother-in-law's borrowed it from me. I think because she fancies Aunt Middleton, not that she wants to read it so much. I think she just likes Aunt Middleton. But
she's not joining the SAS then.
No, I don't think so. She used to teach in the CTF, which is the combined cadet force. So, but yeah, so she got a vested interest. I'm taking the mic there, but it's a really good book. When I get that back, I'll maybe drop it off with you to have a read, because I think you'd really enjoy it. But everything in that book and that we've spoken about today, about this theme of resilience. From what you're saying, I'm getting that resilience starts with a positive mindset and just trying to rid yourself of any negative thoughts, controlling the controllables. And if you do all of this, ultimately, you will become a more resilient person, and you'll put things into your business that will make your business more resilient to catastrophes and chaos like we're living through now. And when those things are in place, it almost kind of breeds this sort of positive sort of vibe to sort of overcome hurdles as they're thrown at you. Would you say that's about right?
Yeah, and it's this snowball effect, I suppose, where the more resilient, powerful, however you want to say it, you feel, the more and more you feel that. Because the more you're going to put yourself into situations that make you feel nervous, the more you're going to break your own comfort zone. And don't get me wrong, there's I have certain triggers. Like as I said at the start, they're normally quite different to other people's triggers, but I still know that I need to work on that. I know that's my responsibility. That's something I need to do. Whereas other people, I think, maybe just think I'm always going to be like that. That's always going to be a trigger. Where actually there is always something you can do to solve it, or help it anyway. I totally agree. It's just this. You have to almost go through things to get certain skills, as horrible as it is at the time.
Yeah.
And that's what we've all got to, I suppose, have in our minds now, is we've gone through it. Actually, we are coming out the other end. We've gone through it. Look at how much more resilient, powerful, positive we are. I do a lot of stuff with my mindset. I know how my mind works, but what I'm trying, in my own learning, I'm trying to make it so I don't have to work on my mindset quite so much as well. There's almost like another level, almost like in your absolute core of you, and it means you don't have to work on that so much.
Mm-hmm.
That's why I'll rely on exercise and being around positive people and all those kind of things, to make sure that my mindset is positive all the time. And I know I need that.
Yeah.
I want to try and get to the stage where I'm not relying on outside forces, sources, whatever, to give me that it's just in me. Which I'm getting there, but that's what I mean. But we're all got a journey.
That's it. And I'm hoping that people will listen to this today and sort of pick out bits that are relevant to them, because it might not, like, some people might listen to this whole thing and go that, like, I can take 80% away from this, but other people's it might be like 5%, 2%, whatever. And that's great as long as you can come away with something that you can apply to yourself in your own work or life, then it's worthwhile sort of tuning into these types of things. But I think sharing these sorts of stories is so important, because a lot of people in your position could have just literally buried their head in the sand, become the victim, and just shut up shop. But you didn't, and you attacked it with a positive mindset, recognized that you're going into the unknown, and adapted, and showed your resilience through positive action and learning. So that's brilliant. And I said it before we started recording, it's inspirational that you're going through all of this tough times, and your dad's been poorly. It's pretty inspirational, Tony. So you should be really proud of that, because there's lots of people out there who will be. and I'm sure your team are proud of you as well. So well done.
Thank you very much.
So, so how is your dad? How long's he been in, and what's the sketch with him now?
Yeah, so I mean, God, you lose track, don't you? It's been 6 to 8 weeks since he got COVID, and yeah, he went into hospital, then came back out, then went back in, and then just quite quickly dipped, and then was in intensive care. Was in a coma for probably a week. Came out of the coma. They thought it was getting better. Was on a normal ward for a few days, and then took an even bigger dip. And then then it must be 2 weeks he's been in a coma. And then just last week, actually, my mum rang one day and it's sort of no change. And they were trying to bring him out of his sedation. And then she rang the next day and they said, "Oh, he's sitting up actually. Do you want to speak to him on FaceTime?" No, he can't talk because he's got a trachea in. So my mum just talked at him, I suppose, for 5 minutes. Well, he was smiling and laughing. And again, so the first thing I thought was like flipping heck, like how again that the strength to get through it. And when the chips are at the most down, that's when you as you said, really dig in and that I almost see it as my time to I don't know how this sounds, my time to show off. Like resilience is my superpower. So actually this is the time where I know I've got one up on a lot of competition or however you want to see it. And it's a time when actually I can help most people.
Yeah.
Because I don't feel like it touches me too much. Don't get me wrong, there's times I've cried my eyes out about my dad and all the rest of it. But again, once I've had 20 minutes, half an hour of that emotion, it's like, right, so what now can I do? So I know I can't fix my dad. So what are the things I can do? I can ring my mum daily. I can go and see her as much as I possibly can. I can make sure my brother's all right. And I can see if there's anything my mum needs shopping wise. So there's lots of things I can still do to make everyone in the situation feel better, and in turn it will make me feel better as well. So I'm doing positive things towards it.
Yeah. Does all your family sort of take this approach to things? Is it just something in your genes? I mean, it sounds like your dad's a proper fighter, so there's obviously like you've got a bit of that with the way you've dealt with all of this. So.
I'd say maybe I'm got the most positive outlook of my family. Mm-hmm. Again, I think sometimes you can go through things and you make sense of it yourself, and then it's up to you to decide how you go forward with those things you've made sense of. Mm-hmm. And again, so anything that's happened in my life, I do feel it's made me a stronger person from it. So yeah, I'd say that my family, particularly my mum and dad, come into their own, and my brother come into their own when it's sort of at the worst case kind of thing. And then I'm really looking at, I suppose, my wife's side of the family as well. Some really inspirational people are there, and an ultra positive outlook on everything. There's always something you can do, and lives for living and all that side of things. So I'm looking at in all parts of my life, I feel like, and same with my tight group of friends, I really do feel like I've got really good people around me, and people that I can totally be my genuine self around.
Yeah.
And I think that's really important as well. And people that I know will give advice that's not tainted from what they might get from it. They really have got my best interest at heart.
Yeah.
And I don't think many people have got that. So I do feel very fortunate for that in my life.
Yeah. It sounds like you've ticked the box of building your tribe off quite nicely. You've got a good group around you, and it's important that I think most people have got that security network and that supportive group around them, even if they don't necessarily recognize and notice it. And through COVID, hopefully more and more people have recognized that group that they've got close to them and are now utilizing that connection more, because that's one thing that I think we all need to take away from this. I'm quite close with my family, and although I've moved further away from all of them, I'm probably speaking to my mum and dad more now than I was when I was living like a mile away from them. And COVID's done that, I think, because I've recognised the importance of connection, although it's only through Zoom or a phone call. It's so important. So your tribe, your family, your group, your friends, your pals, your network around you, that is really important to sort of like, backing up your resilience and building that resilience in you. So
I think as well, if when you listen to successful people, and again, people have got different ideas of what success is. So I suppose for me, success is someone being truly at ease with themselves, and then in turn, so the financial and things normally come from that, and like those people normally do have that even if it's the smallest network you can imagine, 2 or 3 people, but they have that in their life. And like I've had to cut people out of my life at times, and sometimes it's for a period of time, and sometimes it's forever. And you can feel a bit bad at the time and a bit selfish for it. But again, if they're, life can be hard enough. You don't need people who don't maybe share how you want to live your life, or all they do is bring you down, whatever it is.
Yeah, they might not share your values, and you might need to just cut them out while there's an insensitive time. They might come back into it later on, but I think having that resilient, positive mindset, enables you to have those awkward conversations as well, doesn't it? If you're having that conversation, that negative conversation for a positive reason, it's still a worthwhile conversation to have, isn't it?
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
So, lots to think about here, Tony. Lots to think about, but I think there's a lot to take away from this episode, and I am conscious of time, though, mate. So, obviously, you've got lots on your plate, and I don't want to sort of like keep you for longer than you've got. So, just to sort of like draw this to a sort of conclusion, shall we say? What would your top sort of tips for anyone looking to strengthen their resilience with their business or just in life generally? What are your top tips for building that positive mindset if somebody, for example, wasn't feeling particularly positive at the minute? What would you say to them?
I think the first thing is know what and be comfortable with what you represent, and don't shift from that. People will try and sort of push against that sometimes, and if you sort of allow that to happen, all of a sudden it's your business, and you're working in a business that doesn't represent what you want it to represent anymore.
Mm-hmm.
So what's the point? So I almost have sort of like some non-negotiables that I just want, I need around me. And so don't shift on that. Know what you are and why you do it, and don't let people challenge that too much. And if they are, then they're not right for you, and let them work somewhere else, and you get someone in it that does match.
Yeah.
And from then it is approaching everything. I think I've read it somewhere, but it's like a quote that once you recognise that all life is learning, life becomes much easier, something like that.
Yeah.
And I just think so even when you're going through the toughest of times, just sitting there thinking, right, this is absolutely terrible. It could be the most emotional things, but what can we learn here? And you touched on it there, really, with your parents and things. So where you're, this terrible situation, all of a sudden, without this terrible situation, you might not have become that close to your family. And there's certain things that happen in life that make you think that. Normally it is a parent getting ill or whatever, where you think our life's too short, we need to make sure we see each other more. Mm-hmm. Now everyone's gone through at the other end in a much more positive light. And just always, again, that ownership, that fault versus responsibility, inward or outward. Like just really think about the things that you can control, and the things you can't, just let go.
Yeah.
And whether that's that you do the process I do, where you write it down, whether it's that you I know do it some other way, but you just got to try those things that are out of your control. That they're always going to be out of your control.
Yeah.
Always. So
Yeah.
what can you do to either sort of nudge it the way you want it to go, or just concentrate on the things that you can do?
Yeah. I think controlling the controllables is a big thing. You know, if you're feeling under pressure, feeling negative, ask yourself the question, why am I feeling negative? What's making me feel that way? And I would suggest 9 times out of 10, it's probably because of something that you can't control. And the reason why that makes it weigh heavy so much is because we don't like not be, we're all control freaks to a degree, but you've got to kill that inner control freak almost and let it go, cast it aside, and just crack on with what you can control. So yeah, lots of good advice.
Stupidly, the things that we try and control the most are the things that we feel most out of control with. And the reason we feel out of control with it is because we can't control it. It's not one of our controllables. Yeah. So it's this vicious circle. So just try and let it go. And like I say, my process of writing it down, and then whether you scribble those ones out, whether you highlight the ones you can, whatever it is, have a process where you know you can just let them go and you focus on the things you can.
Yeah, I always find, like, if I've got something weighing heavy and I can't control it, I always find I try and shut it off. So I might not have the best night's sleep or whatever, but the following morning, I always think with a lot more clarity. So if I've written it down, if something's weighing heavy, I write it down, or even type it into a note on my phone, just so I've got it out of my head and put it down somewhere. And then we'll sleep on it and come back to it the next day. And because you've had that time to sort of process it in a subconscious state, I always find that I think about things a bit clearer after a sleep, effectively. So, but everyone's going to be different. Everyone's going to have their own process to develop, and but it is important you sort of get rid of the baggage, kill that inner control freak. That's probably a good
and it's most of the time the thing that will give you a bad night's sleep, for instance, with it is probably the emotion of that thing rather than that thing itself. Yeah. And I know it's hard to switch off that emotion sometimes, and you can be really attached to something. But again, just the process of thinking logically on what you can do to help the situation, rather than just acting on that pure raw emotion that's there.
Yeah, separating the emotion out. That's something that a lot of business people, when they're working for themselves, will find difficult to do. But you've got to learn how to do it, and it will be, you know, it's your path to tread. You've got to work out how you sort of separate your emotion out and look at things logically. So yeah, lots to ponder on, Tony, lots to ponder on. So going forward, I'm going to put all your details in the show notes so people can get in touch with you there. You know, can people reach out to you for anything in particular, like the business coaching? Is that something you're looking to do more of, or?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, I'd love them to reach out. So probably best to just drop me a message on social or whatever, whether that's Facebook or Instagram.
Yeah.
Probably not best to email at the moment. Probably get lost in the thousands of emails off clients asking for their hair to be done. But yeah, so yeah, reach out. And one thing I'm starting to do is something I'm calling Power Hour. So we sort of send them a questionnaire and find out a bit about them and the things they want to change in their business and their leadership style. And then they have an hour or so with me where we sort of coach them through it. And then if they want to go forward after that, obviously there's different types of things we do. So yeah, so please do just drop me a message.
That Power Hour seems really, it's almost like a try before you buy sort of approach. So that's you know, well, not try before you buy, but like a taster session, shall we say? So
totally, and to see if I think with anything, you know, it's a client relationship almost. So you want to see that you're singing from the same hymn sheet, you know, and that you'd get from me what you want to get, and that for me that you're open to my style of teaching and learning, really. So that way the relationship moves forward.
Cool. No, sounds really good, mate. Sounds really good. tip of the hat from me. It's been brilliant chatting today. I'm pretty confident that there'll be a lot of takeaways from today's podcast. So thank you. We'll draw it to a close at that. And as I said before, Tony's details are in the show notes. Reach out if you want to speak to him. He is contactable via those details there. So thanks, mate. I'll speak to you soon.
Thank you. Yeah, thanks.